Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for Another Round. So what Another Round essentially about is we center on these 4 high school teachers, and all of them are feeling very unfulfilled. They're all struggling with very unmotivated students, and they just don't feel like their lives are as exciting as they once were. So one day when they are celebrating one of their friends' birthday parties, they decide to tap into this theory that basically said alcohol consumption, which is of course going to be consumed at a relatively low level, can actually give them a bit more energy. So they decide to test this theory, and what first starts out as a really fun theory quickly starts to have a much deeper impact on their lives than expected, and we really start to see how this starts to get to them and fundamentally change their lives forever. So Another Round overall, I was definitely looking forward to this film. I didn't really know a lot going into it, it kind of just came out of nowhere, but it very quickly became, besides Minari, of course, the top foreign film to see. And I don't like to count Minari as one, but Golden Globes is, so I guess it's one. If it's not Minari, it's Another Round. This is the film that everyone seems to be talking about, and so it very quickly became one of my most anticipated releases for the end of the year. I was very excited to see how this film was going to turn out, and it absolutely lived up to the hype. This is a very different kind of film than you're expecting, and it tackles alcoholism in a very different kind of way that I think is really going to appeal to a lot of people, and is definitely a film that I think is going to surprise a lot of people as well. But we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. I mean, that's definitely one of the best things about this movie. Every single actor here is really working at the top of their game. I think every single actor just does a really great job in this film, and I was very impressed by everyone. But absolutely the star of this film, and the person that really just holds the whole thing together, is Mads Mikkelsen as Martin, who, I mean, he's always impressed me no matter what he's doing, but I have heard that his Danish roles are really the ones that are the most profound, really are the ones that are the most special, and I have not seen his other film, The Hunt, but after this film, I very much want to, because the character that he is playing in Martin is someone that is very subdued. This is not a role where he gets angry. Well, not all, he does get angry eventually, but for a while, he's very subdued. He's someone that's very dissatisfied with his life, but you really do feel it throughout this film. You see how he starts to undergo a significant change within his life, and it might not even be through a line that he says. It's just through a facial expression, and you're able to connect so viscerally to who Martin really is as a character, and I feel like Mikkelsen just did such a good job of tapping into that here, and it's easily one of his best performances to date, and definitely one of the best performances that I have seen all year. I just really felt every single emotion from him. I really felt every single thing that he was going through, and it was very easy to connect with him because of Mikkelsen's performance. And again, I think the character we'll get into in a little bit, but I think Mikkelsen just did such a great job of bringing this character to life and really just showing the transformation that he undergoes through consuming everything, and I just really loved the way that he portrayed this role. Definitely one of his best performances to date. But the rest of the cast also does do a really great job here. I think Thomas Bo Larsen, Magnus, Millang, and Ranthe, they all give very strong performances within this film. The chemistry between these 4 actors as well is definitely one of the most impressive parts as well. I really love their chemistry. You really do feel the bonding between all of them, and you really do feel how much they care about each other, how much they depend on each other, and it's definitely one of the most important parts of this film, and they really do sell it. And I think all of them just gave such incredible and very emotional performances here that I think are definitely some of the most impressive of the entire year. But now I really want to get to the directing and the writing here, because Thomas Vinterberg's directing really impressed me with this film. When you're going into a film that is about alcoholism, you're expecting a lot of specifics. You're expecting a lot of certain things to happen in this film, especially the fact that a lot of the time it can come off as very preachy. It can come off as very inauthentic, but Another Round portrays it in maybe the most, in probably the most realistic way I really have ever seen. It's a very accurate depiction of alcoholism, because a lot of this film is actually a lot of fun. There are a lot of fun moments throughout this movie because this just starts off as just kind of like a fun experiment. And I found myself laughing a lot to what these characters were doing. Just seeing them goofing around, the effect it's having on them, the way it's giving them this confidence in life. I think that's something that Vinterberg depicted very well when it came to the directing. But it also makes the emotional moments that hit that much harder because of it, because of the fact that you're laughing so much. You're not expecting the film to get as dark as it really does, but that's what Vinterberg is really trying to do. He's trying to portray alcoholism from really all stages, how it really does make you feel, and I think he just did a really good job with directing that here. I think he also did a really good job of making this film stick out, because it's easy to get caught up in just the minutia and the constant the constant amount of alcohol type related films that we get, addiction films. We get these constantly. It seems like every other week there's another sort of addiction, film coming out that deals with addiction. And I really love the way that this film was able to separate itself. And it really is due to Vinterberg's directing that I think it was able to do that. But the writing in this film as well is really impressive and definitely really great in so many ways. I mean, just right off the bat, the way these four characters are written are really well done. We get the sense early on that these aren't bad people. They're just in a place in their lives where they just feel very dissatisfied. They don't feel they're leaving as much of an impact as they could. And I think a lot of people are going to relate to that, because the state of our characters, Martin, Tommy, Peter, and Nicolau, they're just not gaining that experience. They feel like their glory days are kind of behind them. They'll often talk about things they used to do when they were younger, because they have been friends for a long time, and that they don't do it anymore. And it gets you to really connect to these characters. But you also do see a clear evolution as to when they are consuming alcohol. And the film really recognizes why someone likes alcohol so much. It's not just because you want to get drunk. It's not just because it tastes good. It's also because of what it can do for you. It can be a big performance enhancer in that way. There's a great scene, for example, where one of the teachers is engaging with a student, and the student starts to get hooked into this alcohol as a result, because they're supplying alcohol in water bottles, so they don't realize that it is alcohol in that way. They could just be holding like a hydro flask and you'd think that it's water, but no, it's very much not. And I think that's something that the film does a really good job with. Why do we really taste alcohol? We like it because, again, it's a more enhanced and more confident version of ourselves. It gives us the stigma to do things that we normally wouldn't do, and I think that's something that this film taps into very well. But we also recognize that it's a heightened version of ourselves. It's not as real. It's not as, raw as it would be if we were just ourselves in that way. It feels like almost like we need to use it in order to be this way. And I think that's something else that the screenplay taps into really well, because, again, at first this starts off as something that's very fun. You see how Martin is starting to teach a lot better. You see someone like, say, Peter. He is this music teacher, and his students are not really, doing what he wants them to do. They're not really performing in the right way. They're not really listening to him, but they do start to listen to him. They start to take him a lot more seriously. So you really do feel like this is working. Martin also has, marital problems going on in his life that he suddenly is willing to fix, and he wasn't willing to do before. But we also recognize that the more that we drink, the more it starts to affect us mentally. The more it starts to shift us into a different way of thinking. And Another Round really does recognize that too, that after a while, this is not a joke. This starts to become a lot more serious. And when the film dips into that, it feels that much more effective, because it feels almost like this is the real experience. This is what can happen to people. But it never feels like a cautionary tale in that way. It never feels like a PSA in that way. It just feels like a very natural depiction of drinking alcohol, and how what can start off as social drinking and something that's just an experiment can turn into a legitimate addiction, and how that can have an effect on these characters. And it does have an effect on them in a pretty emotional way. There was one direction they went especially that I really was not expecting, but it definitely really got me, and I think the film did a really good job with that. but it never gets too emotional in that way. This is not Requiem for a Dream, where it's a film that's going to become really uncomfortable to watch because of how much it affects you. And I'm not saying that's a problem. Like, that's not a knock on Requiem for a Dream. I adore Requiem for a Dream. It's just that is not this film's goal. This film's goal is not to tell a story about addiction. It's to tell a story about four men who feel like they're out of their youth and they're beyond their youth, and they feel the only way to get in touch with that is to drink, and what that can do to them, and the pros and cons of what they can go through by doing that. And again, you see at first it does start to help them, but eventually it does start to hurt them. And that's something that's to be expected. That's something that is not going to come as a shock to a lot of people. And I think the film just does a really great job with telling that story. So yeah, I just really love the screenplay here a lot. I think it's very well done. I think the way that it also does a lot with the teenagers here as well. I mean, the film opens up with this scene of this like really wild party going on, and all the teenagers like fraternizing and engaging in alcohol and things like that. And it's a scene that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. I myself can relate to that. I've been to parties like that before, you know, where we're just consuming tons of alcohol and everyone's just going crazy. But again, that's a question of, why do we do this? Why do we drink? Is it because it makes us feel good, or is it because there's a deeper reason? And that's something that these men really question throughout the film, is what is the reasoning for this? What is our true purpose here? But they also are questioning, what's the real goal of this experiment? Is it to, you know, actually enhance our performance, or is it to try to make ourselves feel young again? Is it to get in touch with who we used to be? And again, I think that's something else that this film just touches very well upon. So again, I think the writing is just very well done here. Really great screenplay all around. The cinematography, though, in this film as well, I think is absolutely fantastic. It's very visceral. It feels very real. And the film does this really good, cool thing of whenever they change the experiment, they actually do a good job of kind of filling you in on like what their new plan is and things like that. And I thought that motif was really well done. But the film also, I think, is just very well filmed. There's a lot of shots here that are going to stick in my mind. The score as well in this film is really great. I mean, it ranges from classical music to pop music, but there is one theme that plays throughout this entire film. It's called What a Life. And what I liked about this theme is it's one of those themes where every time they play it, it has a different meaning. And I think that's something that works very well when it comes to this film. I really enjoyed this theme a lot. I think it really tied into the message that this film was going for very well. And I really did appreciate that here. And the editing, I think this film is very well edited. There was really never a point where I was disengaged. There was never a point where the film was losing me. I think overall the film is very well paced in that way. But the other thing to really talk about here is the ending. Everyone's talked about it. It really is like, I think, the thing that's been most talked about when it comes to this film. And yeah, it's absolutely deserving of it, because this film is definitely a contender for one of the best endings of the entire year. And you will see why once you get to those last 5 minutes. I mean, not only is it so emotionally raw and everything just feels so satisfying, but the way that they connect things, you don't even realize they're really doing it. You don't realize what they're really setting up until they actually go there, and it really does work, and it touches you on a very deep level, but you also are having a lot of fun in that moment. And it's a perfect summation of what this film really is, which is a very, I think, again, just very authentic experience of what engaging in alcohol can really do to someone, and why someone would want to engage in alcohol. And I think they do a really good job with that. So again, there's so many things to love about this film. Great performances, all that kind of stuff. Is there anything that really does hold it back? Well, while I do think the film does a really good job of portraying all these four men and the effect it does have on them, I think the character of Nicolau was just a little bit underserved here. There's a really good arc early on where you see him and his wife and this alcohol really having a severe effect on their marriage, and it really driving him over the edge, and it really starting to bother her, and it really becoming a problem in that way. There's a very effective scene, especially where he's like waking up in the middle of the night, and you know, you can see that she is just really concerned about what he's doing. And you know, they have this kid, and that really is something that is bothering him, but then through alcohol that really starts to help him. But we never really come back to that in the way that I wanted it to. I felt like all the other three men men were very well fleshed out. I really understood who they were. I liked their story. I liked where they were going with them as characters, but the other characters, the character of Nicolau, I just thought was a little bit underwritten. But other than that, Another Round is easily one of my favorite films of the entire year. It tackles alcoholism in a much more realistic way than you really are expecting. It's very fun to watch at points, but then it also does get very emotional. It has a stunning performance from Mads Mikkelsen, who gives one of the best performances of the entire year for sure, and an ending that I think is definitely going to leave a lot of people speechless. It's already had a very big impact on a lot of people, and it very much does show why. Just everything about Another Round. This is a kind of film that you're not really expecting, I think. It's a different depiction of alcoholism than you normally do get, and it's definitely one of those films that I think is very much worth seeing towards the end this year. It's definitely one of the best films of the year, for sure, that I have seen, and I'm definitely going to give Another Round overall an A. Overall, guys, in my review of Another Round, let me know if you guys saw this movie, all your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.